Imagine you bought a plane ticket 3 weeks ago. You set an alarm, packed a bag, maybe even arranged a ride to the airport. And then at 2 in the morning, you get a notification on your phone telling you the airline you booked with no longer exists. Not delayed, not canceled and rescheduled. Gone. The company, the routes, the planes, the jobs, all of it, just gone. That is what hundreds of thousands of passengers woke up to when Spirit Airlines ceased operations in May of 2026. And the question that almost nobody asks in the middle of all that chaos is the one that actually matters. What happens next? Not to the passengers scrambling for refunds, not to the CEO explaining himself in a press release, but to every single moving piece of a commercial airline, the planes, the gates, the routes, the people, the prices, when the whole machine suddenly stops. Because shutting down an airline is not like shutting down a business. When a restaurant closes, you lock the front door. When a factory shuts, you turn off the machines. When an airline collapses, you have aircraft scattered across dozens of airports with nobody authorized to move them, passengers stranded mid-journey with nowhere to go, thousands of workers who found out overnight that their career just evaporated, and a web of routes that other carriers are already calculating how to exploit. Every single one of those problems has to be solved simultaneously and in public in real time, with planes still sitting on taxiways and travelers still calling customer service numbers that nobody is answering anymore. The first people who feel it are the passengers, and the experience is not the same for everyone. Credit card payments are the easiest to unwind. Most of those refunds move quickly through the payment processors and land back in accounts within days. Spirit got most of those processed by the evening of the shutdown itself, which is actually faster than most airline collapses manage. But the people who paid through travel agents had to go back to those agents directly. The people who used vouchers or loyalty points were in a completely different situation. Those balances get frozen the moment the airline stops operating. And what happens to them gets decided through the bankruptcy process, which can drag on for months or years. For most people, the honest answer is that loyalty points in a bankrupt airline are worthless. You are not getting a flight for those miles. You are not getting cash. You are getting a line in a legal proceeding. Then there are the passengers who are physically stranded. They already flew to their destination. They are sitting in a hotel room in Florida, or in a terminal in Phoenix with a return ticket on an airline that no longer exists. That is when government agencies step in. The Department of Transportation coordinated discounted fares across competing carriers: United, Delta, American JetBlue, Southwest, Frontier, Allegiant, Breeze. Essentially the full roster of airlines that shared any overlap with Spirit's network. The fares were capped, some under $100 for short routes, and carriers held those rates for a short window of time, a few days, maybe a week. After that, the market goes back to doing what markets do, and last-minute replacement tickets start costing what last-minute tickets always cost. The people who found out quickly enough got out. The people who didn't were looking at driving 12 hours home or paying $600 for a seat on a morning flight because that was what was left. Now the planes. This is where it gets complicated in a way most people never think about. When Spirit stopped flying, they had roughly 90 aircraft scattered across more than 24 airports, just sitting there, on gates, on taxiways, wherever they happened to be positioned when the shutdown was announced. And here is the thing about those planes. The airline didn't own most of them. Like the majority of carriers operating today, Spirit leased a significant portion of its fleet from aircraft leasing companies like AerCap and Avalon and others, who own the physical aircraft and collect monthly payments from airlines to operate them. The moment Spirit stopped paying, those leasing companies wanted their property back immediately. Getting the planes back is not as simple as sending someone with a set of keys. These aircraft are at gates inside secure airport facilities. Airport security won't let you near them without the right authorizations. Ground crews have no instructions and no authority to move them. The lessors hired specialized firms that do exactly this for a living: aircraft repossession. And those firms sent qualified pilots out to physically fly the planes away. Some of those pilots were former employees of the airline that just collapsed, showing up at security checkpoints in civilian clothes, explaining to an airport authority that they need to board that aircraft parked at gate D14 and fly it out. The first response to that request is almost always no. You can imagine the conversations. Once recovered, the planes typically end up in desert storage facilities in Arizona. where the dry climate slows corrosion and an aircraft can be preserved for years without significant deterioration. From there, the lessors decide the future. Some planes get repainted and reconfigured within a few months and enter service with a completely different airline on the other side of the world. Others get torn apart for components, engines, landing gear, avionics, cabin parts. Because sometimes the individual pieces are worth more than the whole aircraft. The planes don't disappear. They dissolve into the rest of the industry and reappear somewhere else. But what about the routes? The destinations Spirit was flying to don't stop needing air service just because Spirit stopped flying. And the gap Spirit left behind is not small. At its biggest hub, Spirit was carrying well over a quarter of all passengers moving through that airport. That kind of market share creates an immediate vacuum, and the remaining carriers move into it fast. Route announcements from competing airlines start appearing within days. New flights go on sale within weeks. But the important thing to understand is that this reshuffling is not neutral for the traveler. When an ultra-low-cost carrier disappears from a route, average fares on that route climb, sometimes significantly. Analysis of Spirit's route exits showed average ticket prices rising roughly 20% or more in markets where Spirit had been the price floor. Fewer passengers end up flying because the price went up, and the ones who do fly pay more. The competitive pressure that Spirit created simply by existing on a route, forcing legacy carriers to keep their prices within range, evaporates completely. For some cities, particularly smaller markets where Spirit was the only genuinely affordable option, no other carrier steps in at all. The route just loses its cheap seats, and the people who could only afford those seats stop flying. That is the part of an airline collapse that doesn't show up in the press releases about route announcements and rescue fares. And then there are the workers. The scale of an airline's workforce is enormous, and it is not monolithic. Pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, gate agents, ramp crews, dispatchers, customer service agents, technology staff, finance teams, legal and compliance departments, marketing, all of it. When the announcement came, the notification went out in the middle of the night. The operational reason for that is real. You need crews on the final flights to land safely, and you need them to find out through official channels rather than through a news alert while they're at altitude. But it means thousands of people woke up the morning after to discover they were unemployed. Their paths forward are not equivalent. Pilots with experience on mainline jet aircraft, especially on common platforms like the Airbus A320 family, which was the backbone of Spirit's fleet, are in genuine demand across the industry. The shortage of qualified commercial pilots is a structural problem that hasn't resolved itself, and carriers move quickly to recruit experienced crews from a collapsed airline. American and United and others were holding dedicated recruitment events for Spirit pilots within days. Flight attendants face a slower and more competitive process. The hiring pipeline is longer, and the urgency from the other side is lower. Mechanics with commercial jet experience are in demand but may need to relocate. And corporate staff, the people who worked in finance and legal and marketing and operations at the headquarters, their skills don't transfer directly to another airline the way a pilot's type rating does. Those are the hardest roads. The pattern underneath all of this is not new. Pan Am shut down in 1991. Eastern went the same year. Swissair collapsed in 2001. Monarch in the UK folded in 2017. Thomas Cook's aviation operation went under in 2019. Every one of those events looked sudden from the outside and had years of math problems building underneath. The model that Spirit was operating, maximum volume, minimum price, extremely thin margins, works when fuel is cheap, when planes are available and functioning, and when there is no serious competition for the budget traveler. When any one of those factors breaks, the numbers stop working. When several of them break at once, the airline is essentially over. It just takes time for the legal and financial machinery to confirm what the economics already decided. What looks like an airline dying is actually an airline being disassembled. The planes fly again under different liveries. The routes get picked up by carriers with larger balance sheets. The gates get reassigned to whoever negotiated fastest. Some of the workers land at better airlines with stronger contracts, and the industry absorbs the whole thing and keeps moving a little more consolidated, a little less competitive on the routes that needed competition most, and slightly more expensive for the people who could least afford it. That is the part of the story that the route announcements and the recruitment events and the refund timelines don't quite capture. The airline is gone, The market left behind is different from the one that existed before it.